Okay, Susan, I assume you start every one of these on the hour. And if so, I guess it's time to get started. So,
Yep. Take her away, Leslie.
Okay, thank you. And welcome everyone to this session on determining the current and future Earth science data frontiers. Now, in the chat, I'm going to again put the link to the session document. And we want to use two documents in this. The first is this one, and then the second is I also provide a link to the slides when we start on those. So the key thing is that we hope you're all by this stage oriented to the technologies. And in that document I've just put in the chat, can you please help take notes in the document? And if you can see at the start of the document, there is an attendance and check-in. Can you please all put your names in there so that we can keep track of that? I'd also remind you that by participating in this session, you agree to adhere to the ESIP community participation guidelines. And again, in the notes, there is a link where you can report any issues that you are concerned with. Okay, I see everyone's filling in. That's really great. So now I'd like to start the meeting with Carl. Can you share your screen and we'll get going on the slides. So these slides are also available if you want to track them independently in this spot here.
So are you seeing my shared screen, I hope?
Everyone's okay, all right. So can we move on to the next slide, please? And this is the introduction next. And I'd like to start with the land acknowledgement. And I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land, seas and waters of the areas that I live, work and meet on. I acknowledge their continuing connection to their culture and pay my respects to their elders, past, present and future. Next. So some of you may be wondering what that graphic is that I have used on my land acknowledgement slide. And when we opened our latest supercomputer at the National Computational Infrastructure, we asked the local Ngunnawal people, who are the traditional owners, for a name for our computer, and they gave us the name Gardi to search for. We also invited a local artist, Ngunnawal artist, Lenise Church, to develop a graphic for it. And the graphic symbolises the gathering of knowledge from different sources and places and the bringing together of an even greater collective system of knowledge. And so I thought how appropriate this graphic was for our session today, where if you like in the middle, we have ESIP, and we have ESIP connecting with other groups all over the place. And we're not quite sure what connections we have, only we know that they are there. And if you can move to the next slide. And so why are we here? And the strategic plan, which is being developed now, and I might also introduce myself as I am on the board of ESIP, has 5 draft themes. And one of them caught my attention, which was that ESIP would be leading innovation in earth science data frontiers. And so far in this meeting, we've had some really wonderful presentations and ideas of innovation and innovation that's going on. But the theme is at the frontiers. And so I asked the question, and so did Rebecca and a few of us, how do we determine the current and future Earth science frontiers, and how do we know if ESIP is at them? And so these are the questions. This is the goal of this session, to try and answer them. But we want to do it from a bottom-up approach and ask you, how do you feel we can identify those frontiers? Next. Next slide. You got a problem, Carl?
I'm on the outline of session slide, but maybe you're refreshing
Yeah, that's
a little
it.
slow.
It's just showing now. Okay, it wasn't showing. So what we're going to do is start off with a few setting the scene presentations and a review historically of what ESIP has done. And Aaron Robinson, the former president, has given us a document which is in our resources in the notes, and you can actually see connections to the past activities, and Carl will present on that. Then we'll just go through some current international connections, you know, working through those other circles that we're working on. And then I've asked George and Siri to present on how they're determining what those frontiers are. We will then have two breakouts, one on mapping the landscape and then the other on technology tracking. But again, as this is bottom up, if you feel there is another breakout that you'd like to have, please let us know, because we've got it set up so we can set up another one. We'll then have report back and closing circles. Next. So let's hand over to Carl, and he will take it away with the first short presentation.
Sure, thank you. And this has been a lot of fun for me to be able to pull this together, especially from the information that Aaron provided, and then I supplemented a little bit with some of the materials from my participation in some of these activities, especially in the early days. But really, the focus here is to provide some historic context for some of the connections that ESIP has had internationally over the past near 15 years now. ESIP was certainly had an early engagement with the Group on Earth Observations, or GEO, starting in an official capacity as an observer in 2007, with GEO really kicking off in 2005 and 2006. So ESIP has been engaged with GEO for a long time and transitioning over to a participating organization in 2013. ESIP has also had a longstanding reciprocal connection with the Open Geospatial Consortium through an MOU that was executed very early, and I wasn't able to track down the exact date, but we've had this reciprocal relationship with OGC as another international organization that has provided great connectivity of ESIP into especially the international community of geospatial standards. We, as a part of what would probably be described as our early organic historic engagement, we had a number of exhibits and contributions to meeting organizations in around the turn of the 10s, 2009 and 2011, as a part of the ISRSE meetings. And then we really started a more formalized set of international engagements in 2017 with the support and significant increase in interactions with our Australian colleagues in setting up and being able to provide guidance to the development of what has now become known as E2SIP. I'll talk about that a little bit. But with that came some more systematic considerations by the ESIP board in terms of what international collaboration should look like for ESIP, and considering certainly the benefits, but also the potential challenges that come with an international engagement for ESIP. When we think about the early engagement of ESIP with GEO, much of that was actually through our various clusters and working groups, participating in the various geo activities, and I would particularly highlight the early development of GEO's Global Earth Observation Systems, System of Systems, or GEOS, that a number of clusters in ESIP were very active in, and our air quality working group was actually one of the best exemplars of early and significant engagement in GEO and the development of GEOS. As I mentioned, in 2013, we went through the process of transitioning from an observer to a participating organization, which increased the profile of ESIP in GEO substantially, which then translated into an even greater contribution to GEO that I'll talk about in my next presentation in terms of contributing to the leadership and decision-making and coordination in GEO. But again, as I mentioned earlier, starting in 2017, ESIP started a much more, I would say, deep engagement with the set of groups in Australia to help organize a conference and bringing together over 3 days 18 international representatives, 70 participants, and ESIP was a co-chair, helping to sort of bring into this gathering some of the ESIP, let's call it spirit or approach to building community. And that worked very well and resulted in continued development of an ESIP-like community, but also an ESIP-connected community in Australia, which then really surfaced something that we've been wanting to have as a conversation in ESIP for many years in terms of how do we systematically approach our international connectivity. And this became a discussion item for the 2017 Board of Directors for ESIP, in which there was some discussion about both the benefits and the risks of international engagement. And I'm not going to read these, but these are in the slides for your reference as just sort of the types of considerations that the board brought to the discussion in terms of how to think about how ESIP can connect to a growing community of international organizations, all of which are addressing facets of the emerging capabilities in earth science data and information. And out of that consideration came essentially 4 potential options that ESIP might pursue, including ESIP maintaining a focus largely as a US-centric organization, focusing on US members and coordination with US opportunities and activities. At the other end of that spectrum is ESIP as an international organization, actually intentionally building and developing international membership and working through the logistics of being able to establish potentially ESIP franchises or ESIP-like organizations more remotely. And then there were some variations on that in terms of ESIP as an international facilitator. And this is in many respects what has been happening in ESIP's work and support for the growth of activities in Australia. And then there's also the strategic international initiatives approach in terms of being targeted in terms of particular activities. Right now, we haven't settled on a particular path, but these are the options that have been laid out for the board as we continue to see what opportunities we have and how they best align with the strategic activities of ESIP. And part of the argument for engagement with and being able to support international ESIP-like organizations relate to some of the differences that exist within different national networks, and being able to acknowledge and work with those differences that may create different structural approaches, as is illustrated here between the institutional contexts between ESIP in the US and the E2SIP groups and model that exists in Australia. We just have, and as an outgrowth of that, there have been some additional activities in which ESIP has collaborated in terms of an additional gathering associated with C3DIS in 2018, in which ESIP was also on the organizing committee and contributing to and bringing some folks into the breakouts that were conducted at that meeting. And basically the feedback from this was, yes, being able to have more of this cross-institutional collaboration is a significant benefit that we want to continue to build on. And we have been doing that through being able to bring our E2SIP collaborators to participate in our US meetings in the winter and summer of 2018. And we continued that with the coordination of a side event in conjunction with the Geo Week down in Canberra, Australia in November of 2019. So we're continuing to move forward and building on those activities and still very much sort of exploring how those different options might play out in reality. So with that, that's sort of the historic context. And my Geo presentation is going to be much briefer, as it's largely based on what we've done historically, but it provides some geo-specific information. So in particular, as I mentioned, ESIP has had an early connection with Geo, and with the evolving governance model and opportunities for engagement, we've absolutely been able to continue to increase and grow ESIP's impact and engagement with Geo. And I absolutely want to highlight here Kathy Fontaine's significant contributions in representing ESIP as our principal representative, and the significant work that she's done in Geo that has reflected very well upon ESIP and our activities and contributions to Geo as an organization. Both Susan and I serve as the alternate representatives to Geo on the program board, which provides significant connectivity across the different activities within Geo. But we also, as a part of that, have participation in various sort of lower level working groups and subgroups, where, as an example, both Kathy and I serve on the data working group. I serve on the GEOS infrastructure development task team, helping to provide feedback on infrastructure development and evolution for Geo. Kathy has helped to lead and contribute to the work of the subgroup, and also helped to organize a number of co-organize a number of the Geo meetings, which has been a heavy lift, especially in the past year with the significant shift to virtual meetings. And she has also served as a reviewer for the cloud computing activities that have been supported by Geo for proposals coming in to make use of those credits. And the other thing that I want to highlight here is that as we engage with Geo, we see a lot of familiar faces from the ESIP community. So there's a much more informal linkage between ESIP and Geo. I think that we're well positioned to be able to take advantage of being able to potentially coordinate amongst all of us who are both engaged in ESIP and in Geo in terms of being able to coordinate our activities and even increase the impact in both directions. So when we talk about impacts, we have certainly impacts with all of the Geo activities through the program board. The program board has linkages to pretty much all of the development and projects that are going on within Geo. So it's a great point of leverage through our position in the program board. We're able to then bring in to our input into those activities, the activities and perspectives that come out of the ESIP community. That reflects well on ESIP as an organization and helps to contribute to that exchange, especially in support of the sustainable development goals that are the focus of Geo, And the key development goals that are specifically related to Earth observations are highlighted on the right. But of course, we also have an opportunity to bring in reciprocal connections from GEO back into ESIP, so that we have, as we were talking about identifying frontiers, being able to identify what is happening in the global GEO community and how we can see how ESIP can participate in, contribute to, or benefit from those activities. So our continued connectivity with GEO, I think, positions us very well for being able to achieve all of these impacts. And with that, I'll hand it back to Leslie.
Okay, thank you, Carl. I now just want to raise awareness of the ESIP RDA Earth, Space and Environmental Science Interest Group, which is run as part of the Research Data Alliance program. Next. And so here is the page and here is the link to it. The co-chairs are Shelley, Danny, Helen Glaves, Pedro Correa of the Sao Paulo University in Brazil, and myself. Erin was one of the foundation chairs and she has stepped down. This was actually started in 2017 in Montreal by EarthCube, where Mohan and Kirsten Lennart set up a BOF seeking international partnerships, and it just sort of grew rapidly, well beyond EarthCube, and we had engagement from some of the infrastructure groups in Europe, such as EPOS and ENVRI, which is where Helen Glaves comes in. And we're recognizing that there are multiple communities developing general and domain-specific leading practices for data management, infrastructure, vocabularies, and common digital services. And so what we're trying to do is coordinate and harmonize these, or even just at best raise awareness of what is going on in other countries in similar things to what we are building in ESIP and our own organizations. Next. We have two key outputs, and both of these are crowdsourced. They're bottom up, and the references are there. I can put them in the chat if people want them. They're also in the meeting notes. And so first of all, we have an infrastructure catalog, and that lists all the groups that are building data infrastructures internationally, including EPOS, Ozscope, EarthCube, and some quite interesting other ones. The second one we've now started is a more focused one on our semantic resources. So that lists glossaries, vocabs, ontologies, etc., that are being developed in the earth sciences. Both of these catalogues also list a few cross-domain catalogues that are cross-domain activities that earth sciences are prominent in. And again, they're just crowdsourced. Have a look at them. If you've got something that's not there, feel free to advertise what you're doing. It's not restricted to RDA members. I promulgate these very widely. Next. But one of our key problems is that we're dominated by the global north. And it's mainly up till now been presentations from the US, Europe, and Australia. And we're desperately trying to use the environment of RDA to break out to further countries. We're also getting more closely aligned with co-data. So as an example of how it works, for example, the vocabulary session that I ran with Simon Cox at the last summer meeting, we took to the SE group to see what else is going on. And that now will be coming back to the next plenary in RDA, co-sponsored by CoData, where we're trying to spread this vocabulary, documentation, governance issues to other domains beyond earth sciences and to other countries. Tomorrow, me and Shelley have a workshop on a session on repositories. They have also taken that to this SE group, because what we're trying to do is say, well, look, this is an interest in ESIP, what other groups are interested in it. And they got some quite interesting feedback from the Europeans at the last session on their repositories work. For the next plenary, we've got a presentation from the Chinese Academy of Science on what they're doing to organize petabytes of satellite data so it can be used for the UN Sustainability Development Goals. And Pedro will be presenting on data infrastructures in Brazil. So again, I welcome you. If you've got something in ESI and you want to test, sorry, ESIP, and you want to test it on the international scene to see who else is doing it, then feel free to come and add your presentation to one of our plenary sessions, which I think happens twice a year. And so again, I've given you the link to the group. If you want to join it, please join it, because it's a wonderful way of connecting internationally with what you're doing locally and see what's happening globally. Next. And so now I'll hand over to Tim, who'll give a rundown on E2SIP. Tim.
Thanks very much, Leslie. I hope you can hear me. Yeah, so look, Leslie's asked me to give a bit of a talk about E2SIP and how it evolved in Australia. And Carl's given a little bit of an intro to that. So thank you for those slides that you put into your presentation there, Carl. For those of you that aren't aware, I am from Ozscope, and Ozscope is a national research infrastructure provider in Australia. We're a non-for-profit set up to serve the Earth and geospatial science communities. So we're largely funded by the federal government under the National Research Infrastructure Strategy. And there are a number of other, 23 other organisations similar to ours that represent different aspects of science and other research and represent their communities. So in that context, I'll talk a little bit about how E2SIP evolved in Australia and who the stakeholders are. So if we go to the next slide, please. So yeah, as I said, look, there are a number of different stakeholders, and we all represent different communities, but all have an interest in ESIP and what ESIP does. And at the time that Erin was starting to sort of look at these international collaborations, and people like Simon Cox and Leslie were engaging with our community about how ESIP might work in Australia, the research infrastructure providers were also getting together and creating a grouping, sort of a loose grouping called NESIF, which is the National Earth and Environmental Sciences Facilities Forum. And this was being established as sort of a collaborative and strategic forum intended to be at the sort of directorial level to bring common strategies to how we deal with data and how we deal with common issues sort of across the landscape in Australia. If we go to the next slide, please. So it was kind of really fortuitous timing, because at that time we didn't really know what the scope was of the work that we wanted to do under NESIF. And ESIP came along and said, you know, we want to engage in Australia. And so we were looking at where that would fit, and the two actually fit really nicely together. So the way it's evolved is that NESIF is sort of that directorial level, sort of strategic direction. It's driving project level collaboration. Each of the NESIF partners have their own international connections and discipline specific connections that they bring to that group. And then E2SIP is kind of more at the technical level. And for those that are unaware, the two is for environment. So we added environment in there to better reflect our sort of grouping. So it's Earth and Environmental Science Information Partners in Australia. But that group was a more technical group. It provided more sort of, you know, support for people doing technical activities. And it provided connections into organizations that really we wouldn't have been able to access otherwise. So, you know, one of the real advantages of creating E2SIP in Australia was that it allowed us to become an ESIP cluster. And it provided some connection for some of our researchers and technical people through into organizations within ESIP like NASA and NOAA, who are, might be difficult for our members to access normally. And obviously it provided access to other ESIP member organizations as well. So if we go to the next slide.
Your 4 minutes are up, so try and finish up soon.
No worries. So this is the sort of the landscape in Australia. So we've got a whole bunch of different organizations that represent the different disciplines. You're probably familiar with IMOS, Atlas of Living Australia, TURN, maybe Auscope. And then there's a bunch of government organisations in there as well, CSIRO, Geoscience Australia, Bureau of Meteorology and others. If you go to the next slide. So I guess to summarise, in Australia, we're really trying to use NESIF to provide this sort of broad area of scope. And then we provide depth through our connections with ESIP or E2SIP. And if you go to the next slide and then jump to the one after that, you can actually jump to the one after that. So this is, so the first one was for I'll go back one, sorry. So I guess for geoscience, like Auscope is in the middle there, and we use ESIP, E2SIP, our connections with EPOS and IRIS for our sort of depth of knowledge in our discipline-specific area. And then NESIP sits along the top there where we connect in with all of the other research infrastructure providers. And each of them have their own, vertical column connecting into their own groups. And then E2SIP also provides us with access into some of these other groups like RDA, Geo, UN and CoData. And I'll leave it there.
Okay, so now we're going to move into the next lot of presentations, which are going to be some ideas of how we track those changing frontiers that are going on in technology and in data. So the first was a presentation I saw from Siri Joda in EGU a few years back on the way he'd used conferences to track changing patterns in what people are interested in earth sciences. Siri, can you take over?
Yes, do you hear me? Hello?
Yes,
Yep.
yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good. I just needed that verification because, I hadn't spoken for a while yet. All right, so go ahead, next slide. All right, so yes, as Leslie said, this was taken from a presentation that was made at the 2019 EGU General Assembly. The idea for using topic analysis on text to determine evolving trends grew out of a desire to get an overview of what the various Research Data Alliance working groups were doing. The tab was having a hard time getting an overview since it had expanded so much. So I suggested that that some NLP could be applied to the case statements and the outputs to determine what was happening. This evolved in, so we set up, we developed some notebooks using some tools, NLP tools that were available in various open source packages. And then the next year at the Earth and Space Flight Informatics Division meeting, the leadership asked whether the themes that were used to organize sessions needed changing, evolving. And I suggested again that NLP might help provide an answer. And then so we went ahead and dived into using the abstract. So next slide, please, to do this work. So we were able, Copernicus gave us the abstracts, all the abstracts in the PDFs from 2009 to 2018. No, actually, I think we got some of them delivered and some of them we did just by screen scraping. But anyway, we extracted the text from the PDFs, put that extracted text in Solar, did common preparation of the corpus, and then used the GenSim and scikit-learn toolkits in a Jupyter notebook to do latent Dirichlet allocation, a type of latent semantic analysis. And then we applied various tools to visualize the topics. There's actually a long history in using NLP to track trends in like news stories and do sentiment analysis of user reviews, categorize library collections, etc. All right, next slide. I won't go into more of the methodology and just try to make this quick. Topic modeling identifies topics and their distributions across the documents in a corpus. Each document is viewed as a mixture of various topics, where each document is considered to have a set of topics that are assigned to it via the latent Dirichlet analysis. All right, so next slide. It's a generative probabilistic model that uses statistical methods to discover the hidden, i.e. latent themes or topics in documents. A word can belong to multiple topics, obviously, and neither the order of the documents in the corpus nor the order of words within each document are treated as being significant. Okay, next slide. So there's a really cool online tool that displays how this can work. So the shown text is just a few sentences, and if you apply the LDA and you iterate, by 10 iterations, you have separated the topics where topic 1 is talking where bank provides a loan for a boat, whereas topic 2, bank is the bank of a river with a boat tied up to it. And it's able to separate those two topics, and it shows there on the right the top terms that characterize those two topics. So that's a simple example. Next slide, please. So topic analysis just gives you a list of words, right? The most characteristic words of the topic, but then a human has to interpret, well, what is that? Does this define a coherent topic or not? It's unsupervised. In other words, you don't give it a set of training, tag data in order to define a topic. And it may not be stable across different realizations. It's sensitive to this pre-processing, of the stop words removal and things like that. And then if the documents are very homogeneous, it's not going to be able to distinguish very well unique topics. Next slide, please. So these are an example of some of the visualization tools that make it easy, to make it easier to interpret the topics. So what happened on the left is a mapping of, so you specify how many topics you want to pick out. So in this case, I think we assigned 20 topics. Asked it to select 20 topics, and then by either clicking on so the circles represent the frequency of words. The topics are labeled, and then their separation shows how well, on the two principal components, shows how well the topics are separated. If there's a lot of overlap, it means the two topics share a lot of words. And if they're separated, it means they're unique. So you click on a topic, and then you can adjust how distinctive, how important to a given topic, a given word is, and that's the distribution of those words in the topic are the red, and over the whole corpus are the blue, and you can play with that slider. This is a screenshot from the notebooks that we created to explore the topics. Okay, so next slide is another example of another tool that we provide, scatter text, and this shows is showing the topics used in ESSI abstracts of 2018 versus 2011. And so what you see on the edges, on the lower right and upper left, are the terms that are tend to be more unique, occur more uniquely in one year or another. And the top terms then are shown on the left, and some of the characteristic terms across are shown on the right. And I think, let's see, next slide. Yeah, it just points out that there was a tsunami in 2011, so 2012, one of the top words was tsunami, spill, coastal, And then 2011, the top term was moles, which came up a lot. It's metadata objects for linking environmental sciences. A lot of papers in USSI were about that, I guess. Anyway, sensor networks. So that's another way of looking at it. And then here we can compare, we're comparing 2013 versus 2014. And then the lower right shows that what the new terms were that were occurred much more frequently in 2014. And each one of those dots, only some of them are labeled because it would be too cluttered if they were all labeled, but you can mouse over each dot and see what it was, what its frequency was. And there on the right are some of the other unique terms in that popped up in 2014 that you discovered
Jonah,
by.
which slide are you on? I think we may be out of sync.
Oh yes, one more slide. I'm sorry. Advance another slide, and I was looking at my own copy. I'm sorry. Go ahead. And then, right. Thank you very much. This was the one I talked to about the tsunami, and then this is the one I just talked about, where the lower right quadrant shows in red shows the topics that were frequent in 2014. This really is just to give you a flavor of the exploratory tools that are available. So let's jump to the next slide. The notebooks have a nice feature that when you're browsing, I don't see the next slide yet.
I'm in 2015 versus 2016.
Yes. And then advance.
2017.
Okay, I thought I had hid that slide. Oh my goodness, a lot of these in the version I'm looking at were hidden. Is this going straight from Google Docs?
Siri, we uploaded the presentation early. If you've been changing it behind the scenes, you'll have to.
Yes,
yeah, we won't be seeing your changes. So can you focus on what Carl's showing on the screen?
Okay. So a lot of these, for the sake of time, I removed at the last minute. So advance. Okay, fine. Archetype chemistry. I'll talk about that. So another application was the convener of Arctic Science Summit Week says, what would be some good sessions to organize around in the next conference? That was to be 2019. Okay, so next slide, please.
You're at 10 minutes, so try and finish up.
Yeah. This is the next content. This is the last slide of content, and then there's the summary. So so the first order topics were too general: sea ice, glaciers, ice, soil. You know, those were the sort of terms that came in the top. So we removed. So we set those as stop words, so they weren't considered in doing the topics. And then there were very terms that were too specific to get these cross-cutting ones that we were interested. So when we removed those, we got second order topics that did turn out to be good targets for organizing sessions around, like unmanned vehicles, methane release, aerosols, what have you. Okay, next slide. No, keep going. I'm sorry, to the summary slide. All right. Latent semantic analysis useful in determining trends in topics of scientific research. For ESIP, you could look at session proposals, the outputs and guidelines, content on the wiki pages. All that could be mined to do to analyze trends and salient topics. But preparation of the corpus, selection and tuning of the algorithm, and tools to support interpretation are all essential in order to obtain meaningful results. And if you ever make available the slides that are online, you'll see the link to the GitHub page where these notebooks are. Okay, that's it. Thanks a lot.
Okay, George, can you talk now about what the OGC does in its technology trends emerging clusters? Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Next slide. So as was pointed out earlier, Thanks, Carl. Oh, yeah, yes, they are different. All right. I added a slide about OGC, and I do want to thank Carl for mentioning the long-running coordination that we've had with ESIP. It's been beneficial for us, and I think it's been beneficial for ESIP. The topic of today is really about technology forecasting, and in particular, we started a technology forecasting activity based upon the need to both maintain our current standards and discussions while simultaneously addressing the evolution of technology and markets with new standards, new best practices, all of those kind of things. It fits into that economic discussion of an innovator's dilemma. So let me show you on the next slide what we created in terms of a process, and this will also kind of be the agenda for the 10 minutes here. And so based on a National Academy's report from a decade ago, on persistent forecasting of disruptive technologies, we created this 3-step process. First is breadth, so look broadly, identify broadly the terms and the topics, do an assessment and identify clusters that emerge, and then figure out how to take action with roadmaps, that kind of a thing. So we'll go through each of these. So next slide is essentially the landscape at the broadest level. This is the mindscape of the technology areas in which our trends look at. It's very similar to ESIP. There could be some differences down in the details, but I think you would see these are very similar topics to the technology that ESIP addresses as well. So with this landscape, we undertook a very similar, on the next slide, a similar activity to which Siri just described, in terms of taking that broad set of resources and dealing with it with an AI, natural language processing construct. This is online as the OGC Technology Explorer, and it allows us to take what is now a 1,300 dimensional concept space and be able to use it for analytics. For example, in this query is geoscience and remote sensing, lights up the areas that you see, and you can explore this and see relationships, and it allows us to investigate the trends that we have identified. The next slide shows the mind map busted out to the next level, and this is the lowest level at which we track. There's 50 or so trends, they tend to come and go, for which we have a description and a set of references for each one of these trends. And you know, this is a lot of information, and I don't expect you to be able to grab that and understand it. In fact, it's too much to deal with, right? So this is the end of the next slide, is the indication of we've now done the breadth analysis. We do this on a regular basis, we do the scan, but how to get it down to a set of clusters that are relevant and are much less. And so next slide is about the model for the system which we created and the technology ecosystem model we have in mind that allows us to identify emergent clusters. It's based on innovators of the digital revolution from Walter Isaacson. Click on the next, this builds a little bit. The Nature of Technology by Brian Arthur, who's an economist on technology. Click again, it builds on the notion of complex adaptive systems. So the ecosystem in which we all evolve our technology in can be models of complex adaptive systems. And we need to look at what emerges out of that as the clusters of technology that are ripe for us to go after. So this is our model. Next slide, we have a set of criteria that allows us to assess each of the trends for this analysis. Next slide. This is what pops out. So you take all those 50 some odd trends, you think of a complex adaptive system ecosystem, you do the analytics with respect to the criteria that I showed you, and they cluster into these kind of topic areas. And so next slide, this is the kind of the middle point, if you will, of our analysis. Well, it's actually quite far into the analysis. It's the key thing. The next step is to say, how do we take action? And those are tech notes and roadmaps on those clusters. So if we go to the next slide, you'll see how we have, tells what OGC does with respect to that. Next slide shows how we prioritize the clusters, looking at, on the horizontal is a time axis, or really kind of a what is closest to you. There's no linearity associated with time going out to the right. And then there's disruptive and sustaining. So we've kind of categorized each of those. And coming out of that, then we develop technology notes on the next slide as an example of several of those that we've done over the past few years, the geospatial data science being one of the most recent. And we've done a thing on digital twins that's in production right now. But I leave you, I think, with the last slide, which is, again, the clusters. Oh, I forgot to put that in. We do road mapping. One of the key areas we're doing road mapping, I think, is relevant to ESIP is model interoperability. We see a real opportunity to integrate Earth system modeling with built environment modeling, with gaming and simulation. How to do that is yet to be sorted out, but this really gives you a sense of the road mapping exercise for the priority clusters. But I think the last slide now, next is, yeah, so this is what I leave you with is the process that we used to get to a set of clusters, 12 of them right now. 3 of them are probably the most relevant. We'll be diving into each of these and actually all of them continuously, but the 3 that I highlight are probably the most relevant to ESIP currently. Of course, I already want to highlight AI and machine learning after what I saw a couple hours ago. So there you go, Leslie.
Thanks very much, George. Okay, so we're going to go into the next phase where we're having some breakout groups. Now, I haven't been asking questions of the speakers because the speakers will be running these breakout groups, and so you can ask us in those. And I've got to, the first one is mapping the landscape. What are the key groups working at the science frontiers, and asking, does ESIP connect with those? So Carl and I will be running those. The next one is the tracking of the technologies. So you've had presentations from both George and Siri, and they will be running that. And then Rebecca's standing by because we thought, again, I like doing things crowdsourced, bottom up. Does anyone have another breakout session that they feel is something they'd like to discuss? I'll just give you a couple of minutes to think, because when you go into your breakout rooms, you will see that in the slide deck, there are 3 questions asked and for each breakout group. And I just ask you with your breakout groups to take, say, 25 minutes and work through those and just answer some questions we've put, or if you don't like my questions, change it, put something in. It's, you know, it's your breakout, but we do want you to come back with 3 key takeaway points. And then we'll reconvene, go through the results from each breakout, and then do some closing circle work. Now, my last call, does anyone speak up now if you would like another breakout session? Okay, so what we'll do now is ask you to self-select into a breakout room. Now, on the bottom bar of the, you can see that there on the black bottom bar, there is now a thing called Breakout Rooms has appeared. When you click on that, the 2 breakout rooms appear. And so what we ask you to do is see it's got mapping of the landscape frontier and tracking changes. If you hover over the black title, and move to the right, you can see that you can join. Can you please click whichever one you want to join? Don't worry if it doesn't work. Susan's there in the background to rescue you and just get you to go into whichever one you would like to go into. So can I please ask you all, when you click that button, you will join it and you will leave this main meeting room.
Looks like people are selecting their room. I can see that, and some of you are moving there. If you have any questions, just shout and I'll try and help you get to where you want to go.
if you're having trouble, put it in the chat which one you'd like to join, because Susan can click you into that straight away. We've only got, we've only got 2. Yep, okay, I can see people are doing it. Can you please? Okay. So I'm going to go and join my one now. So I'll
And
leave
Leslie,
you in charge,
what
Susan.
time do you want me to bring everyone back?
It's Rebecca, are you still here? How are we going for
Yep.
time?
Yeah, I'm still here. So in 25 minutes, or do you want me to give you a special time?
I can do it 25 minutes from now, no
Yep,
problem.
25 minutes, that would be fine.
Great.
Okay, all right, I'm going to join my group.
My breakout room window is blank, so if somebody could switch me over. This is Surijoto.
And what room would you like to be in? Mapping the landscape or tracking the changing data frontiers?
You need
whatever one I'm
tracking.
facilitator for.
He's a facilitator for tracking.
Got it.
Okay, I'm leaving now.
Anybody else need help getting where you want to go?
Hi, Susan. This is Nick. Can you put me in the data one?
Sure.
Thanks.
Susan, can I go in and out of both of them so I can keep track of what's going on?
Sure. Let me see if I can make you a co-host, and then I believe that will allow you to do that. Okay, I've made you a co-host. I believe in the bottom, you should be able to click on breakout rooms and you should be able to join whichever one you want. Does that work?
Let's see. When I click on breakout rooms, let me close
Tell
it.
you what, I'll put
again.
you in one, and whenever you want, leave the room, come back here, and I'll put you in the other.
Okay, that's perfect.
Which one do you want to start with first?
I'll start with Leslie's, the top one, the landscape.
Off you go.
Thank you.
Nick, I see you're back. Did I not put you in?
No, I didn't want to be in the tracking one. I want to be in the other one.
All right. Sorry about that. There you go.
Hey, Susan. Should I see Jackie's in the first one, I think. I can go to the second one if I can help out there, or.
Sure, that would be great.
Cool. Okay.
And Sahara and Lorraine and Doug and Crystal, anybody else know which room they want to go to? Oh, Nick, did I put you in the wrong place again?
No, I'm fine. I think I'll just I have some other things to do, and so I'll just pass on that. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. It wasn't quite what I was hoping for, so I'll come back.
Well, you should have suggested a third breakout room then. We can just hang out here and talk if you want.
Yes.
What do you want to talk about?
So we've got the poster sessions coming up in about an hour.
Yes, and that what we heard from the summer meeting was that was one of the things people enjoyed the most. So yeah, to join that, you have to click. It's a little confusing. It's not in the plenary and the breakouts. It's in the other event that is part of the winter meeting.
Right, at the very beginning, you click on that one.
Yeah.
When you come in. Okay.
See you there later.
We'll be back there in a little bit. Bye.
Great. Doug, Sahara, Hyan, anybody want to go someplace that they can't get to?
Carl, you're probably going to have to reload the slides. Because if you keep using the problem we had was.
It looks like I'm seeing new content.
Okay, all right.
Let's load it and see.
Did you want the groups to present their takeaways?
I think just quickly,
Okay.
what do you think?
I think
You're in
that's
charge.
I think that would be great.
See, can you see my screen?
Yeah, it's on the report back.
Okay.
Oh, that's not a good sign. It's empty.
That's weird because let me change, let me go back. Maybe, yeah, because it could have, may have to reload. Yeah, since I was in the midst of presenting it when it when it got updated. So let me
Seems like if you're presenting, it presents from what you started presenting.
right. So now, that's better.
You want to go to the takeaway points slide?
Oh, that'll be, here are
That
the
one?
takeaways from ours.
Right. So do you or Leslie want to do these?
I'm happy to do them.
Okay. Sounds good.
We've lost a lot of people. We've only got 15. So for those of you who managed to stay to the bitter end, if you look at our slides, you can see where we listed groups. The key takeaways was we need better connections to what's going on in the global south. That's Africa, Asia, South America. We also need to consider that there are frontiers of innovation, which is one topic, versus frontiers for adoption or use, which is another. The other key point is that now everyone's overwhelmed. There are so many potential groups. How do we make connections? And one suggestion was that we use the ESIP AGU, whoever's running them, data help desks, that they are places where people could come and ask, where can we make connections? And then the other thing is, based on Siri's presentation, that we mine connections of people who are as individuals from organisation joining clusters or joining the ESIP meeting versus ESIP official list of partners, like where we have the official connections, and just see if there are, we've already got some of these key groups participating in our in the ESIP family, but yet we have not made connections to their organisations. Does anyone else want to add anything from that breakout?
Yeah, probably the only thing I might add would be a little bit of expansion on that mining of connections is, you know, potentially looking at the 1 degree or the 2 degrees of separation that we have with ESIP participants and the potential multiple organizations that they're engaged with, and identifying which of those multiple, there's the home organization that we're all a part of, but then there are the connections from those home organizations or those individuals into others that we would need to do some additional work to try to acquire.
Okay.
Maybe someone can answer this for me. Would those organizational affiliations or volunteer connections be something that would be listed in someone's ORCID?
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just trying to think, as we look at ESIP's membership database, are there automated ways that we can access those connections? And if we're pushing for people to have up-to-date ORCIDs, I was hoping maybe that could be an answer.
That, I guess that could be a twofer, because I think it could go into ORCIDs, but it's not something I think that a lot of us provide.
Right.
I'm trying to think of how that, what slots it goes into in an ORCID.
So shall we go on to the other breakout? And there are 3 key points. Siri, Joda, or George?
Well, we had a good discussion. I'll take a crack, and Siri Joda chime in. First was to maximize collaboration, both internal and external. We saw lots in the 3 questions, a lot of discussion about you know, that coordination is key. Certainly the opening presentation said the same thing. We had a lot of discussion about You know, we can identify frontiers in some analytic fashion, and that's available then for ESIP leadership to guide and inspire. But there's also the key aspect of ESIP of listening to the community and watching the communities emerge, and that's the identification of the frontiers. And then we quickly added tools to manage the data, which seemed like a really good idea. Siri Joda.
Okay, well, some things to take into consideration that came up, and that is that, you know, how do we prioritize what's most valuable to do versus what is, you know, the easiest to implement based on, you know, available resources in terms of people, and if you know, if some technology is involved, if there's a cost associated, you know, what you know, what's possible, and of course, you know, willing volunteers. And that frontiers, you know, may differ for different communities. You know, maybe what's a frontier for in a given discipline or a given you know, population. Maybe early career is looking at something different than somebody who's more, you know, aligned towards, you know, commercial interests. So you know, those are just some facets that came up.
Okay, thanks. So I've got 2 minutes to wrap up, but what I find the most interesting, and both groups talked about this, is perhaps working on the definition of frontiers based on innovation or adoption and usage, and a discussion about different community resilience groups may be interested in the data, and that's a frontier. So maybe time could be spent working out definitions of what is meant by frontier. And there's still a little bit of time left if somebody else has something they want to contribute about how to move forward.
Well, I'm going to
go ahead.
I want to put Susan on the spot, because Susan, this was one of the themes in the strategic plan, and we said we'd run a session for you to address this. Do you have any comments?
I had lots of comments in my breakout group, but you weren't in it. I appreciate you guys raising this, and you know, not just as words on paper, like, okay, well, how do we identify it, and how do we know that we're there? I thought it was really interesting that, you know, Ken mentioned, you know, we can identify frontiers, but ESIP as a volunteer-driven, volunteer-led community, if those aren't the areas that people want to be working in, well, what does that mean? And so we actually talked a little bit about how, you know, there's the work that happens in the clusters and the collaboration areas. And I do see that as the heart of ESIP. But then there's also, you know, as an organization, what can we do to make sure in our meeting content that we are having plenary speakers that are pushing us all, right? And that are providing that inspiration and showing that what's possible area. And then we talked about, I mentioned how the ESIP lab also can have funding opportunities with a particular focus that might be able to keep us aligned with a particular frontier. And then I raised the question that you kind of heard there is, you know, we talked about listening, and, you know, I said I've done the last 6 months, I've done a lot of listening, but some voices are louder than others, right? And I've heard change this, and then I've heard don't change this, keep it just the same. And so I would love to see us practice what we preach, and if there are ways to use data like what Siri showed us to objectively determine what those frontiers are, that's helpful for me, because I don't want to just listen to the loudest voices, and I'd like to try and really practice what we preach.
Okay, well, thank you, Susan, and thank you to our speakers and to our participants who stayed to the bitter end. I think we're there, and thank you for a very good session. And well, I can't really say it's good because I'm organising it, but thank you for an interesting session. And hopefully there's material for ESIP to follow through. Thank you, everyone.
Great, thank you. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Great session.